I don't know. Catherine, is your cohort on board?
I'm here.
Are you? Oh, excellent. Well, I think we have enough people. We're going to go ahead and switch to our first presenters because I don't want to keep them waiting. I don't know. You kick off a meeting with Newbery Award and Newbery medalists, Catherine Applegate and Jennifer Choldenko. How can you go wrong? They have decided to combine forces, and they have a great fun book that they have done together called Dogtown. And they are, well, I was going to hold it up and show it to you, but of course I piled it under everything else I've got. But they're here to talk to you about it. There, she's got it. It's cool that the author has it. And Jamie, can we focus on her? And you guys, please give a very warm welcome to two of my absolute favorites, Jennifer Choldenko and Catherine Applegate.
Oh, I have to start, Jennifer, because I am sitting here with my prop pug, and, and she weighs a ton, and she's being very, very patient. I've been slipping her little pieces of turkey, but the reason I wanted you to see her, this is Boss. She's a new addition to our family, and a rescue from Long Beach. And we were lucky enough to have the most magnificent illustrator on Dogtown named Wallace West, and he sent us illustrations of our dogs. So I wanted you to see his version of Boss in all her glory. I think he did a wonderful job, and we have been so thrilled and delighted with his illustrations. So, okay, you're free. I'm out of turkey.
So I'm gonna try and do the same thing. Shay, come here. Shay, come here. Jump. Shay, jump, jump, jump.
It's harder with Shay.
Oh, what a good girl. Yeah.
Wow.
And this is there she is.
She's beautiful.
Okay. Great.
She's also enormous.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, what got you guys started in deciding to work on a book together? Had you known each other before, or was it something that was suggested to you?
Well, actually, what happened was a librarian friend got us together. We were living actually very close to each other, and a librarian friend got us together, and it was a get together at my house. And my dog is kind of like a Velcro dog. She goes everywhere with me, and she doesn't pay any attention to anyone else. And she, sits adoringly. But Catherine walked in the door, and the dog turned from me to Catherine, and she spent the entire afternoon with Catherine. So I knew that
it may have been the bacon in my purse, in fairness.
Yeah. So we just started having lunch, and we started talking about other authors that had written books together. And that happened a few times. And then one day we just decided, well, what if we did that?
The hard thing was actually, interestingly enough, coming up with an idea that we both adored. I mean, there was no shortage of ideas, believe me. It was just what would work, what would be fun. And we kept coming back to dogs because we both adore dogs. And Jennifer, in fact, volunteers at the Marin Humane Society. And I used to have a dog who was a reading buddy dog who worked in classrooms with kids on the spectrum. And so we just kept going back to that idea, and it was so enticing, but we wanted a way to approach a dog book that was a little bit different because there's so many out there. So that took a while.
Yeah, and somehow when we got the idea of this shelter that had broken robot dogs and strays and misbehaving dogs, and we started to imagine what the relationship between the metal dogs and the real dogs might be, we started getting some momentum. But initially we thought we would write in, we write in two different voices for two different characters, two different main characters, and Catherine would do one voice and I would do one voice. but we started that and it kind of it collapsed in on itself. So we had to take a different tack.
Well, part of that's because it's designed to be really comfortable for maybe not emerging readers. So, you know, the next step after that, early chapter readers, and it's got tons of illustrations and the chapters are tiny. So the sense of, you know, progression is great. And if you've got a young reader or a reluctant reader, it's so good for that. And his illustrations are wonderful. So we realized having two narrators was going to be a little too complicated for a book where we wanted to focus on one particular dog. And so that made it a little bit easier. And it was remarkably easy for us to find that voice. I think because we both love middle grades so much. We've written so many middle grades between us. And so that part became really fun.
Yeah, and we have very similar senses of humor. So part of the fun was to think of something that I could send to Catherine and make her laugh. And then she would send something to me that made me laugh. And that was part of the fun. I mean, I have to say, writing the whole thing was such a hoot.
It was great. And in fact, we just recently got back from a 2-week tour all over the country. And I have to say, I knew it would be fun, but you know, we Jennifer and I knew each other by that point pretty well, but it can be stressful being on a book tour. It's a different city every day. And, you know, sometimes not the best hotel. And we were eating a lot of granola bars and it just turned out to be so much fun. So much more fun than collaborating with my husband, as I've told her many times.
I can understand that. So you had a separate document always. You weren't using like a shared Google Doc or anything like that. It
back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we would go, you know, tag you're it. And I am about ready to give something to Catherine, and I just can't wait to here, it's yours now.
Very hot potato.
Wonderful feeling. It's like when you have a toddler and you're really tired of it and you want to hand it off to the other parent. You know? Like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember writing one note. I don't know what to do here, so you figure it out.
And so then you had one editor for the two of you on this project, right?
Yes.
Do you think they dealt differently with Catherine than with Jennifer? Like, were they more, you know, directive with one of you or more gentle with the other, or you think?
Well,
how do you
she
think it was?
didn't really know who wrote what. It wasn't like she.
Oh, that's right.
So she got one document, and then she would give her notes on that. So you know, it's our own little secret.
And our editor was Liz Zabla at Macmillan Fywell Friends, and her bedside manner could not be improved upon. She is so gentle and kind and funny, and you know, made, you know, there weren't really any bumps in the road, but had there been any, you know, Liz would have smoothed them out instantly.
You could have just blamed each other. So what would be what you would say to an 8-year-old who's looking at this book? Like, what's the elevator pitch for this book?
Well, I think it's about a metal dog and a real dog who form a bond because they want to escape Dogtown. They want to go home.
We've had a lot of booksellers say that they're going to use this as their holiday book. And I think it's because it works really well for multiple ages, and you can go quite young with it. You can easily go up into like early middle school, I think, because it's got some more complex humor. But at the end of the day, it's about friendship. And I think it works for a lot of different people at a lot of different levels. The hook, I think, is we're talking about robot dogs, and you can't go wrong with a robot dog, right?
That's been my pitch. So that's pretty great. I see your stuffies in the background there. Are you going to have a small robot dog?
I think that's a great idea. Let's talk to Macmillan.
Yeah, I looked at them, but they're kind of out of my price range, I'm afraid.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to this selling in the holidays. Obviously, it's been selling already, and I think people will really enjoy it. And I think it could go into any classroom library because like both of your books, it's it's accessible to so many kids. It's not intimidating looking. It is longer than your books usually appear, either one of you. But then when you look inside, there's white space, there's great illustrations. And the characters are so lovable. It's really great. So
yeah, I've had a few teachers tell me that it's really good for like second graders that are good readers, because there's nothing in it that is too complicated or too is going to be upsetting or beyond their emotional ability to understand. So it's good for that kind of group that read well, but still need to be a second grade level information.
That's very good.
I was signing the other day, and I said, "Oh, is this for two brothers?" And they said, "Oh no," they said, "This is for my father and his friend."
That's great. That's great.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, no, it goes for everybody. Well, I think your dogs have been extraordinarily patient. Now, I do have to say, Catherine recently announced the fourth and final of the One and Only Ivan.
I
series,
did.
right? That comes out in the spring.
I did, yes.
And-
I'm very excited about it, and it's been really interesting revisiting that. I did revisiting Ivan. The other voices, I did Ruby and I did Bob, were so different. But going back to Ivan, as a parent, Ivan himself has twins, has been really kind of bittersweet, I have to say.
That's really cool. That's neat. And I forget, Jennifer, when I see the books behind you, that Dad and the Dinosaur, I love that book. That's a
me
really
too.
funny one. What's
I
next
love
for you? Do you have something new coming out anytime soon?
Yes, in June, I have The 10th Mistake of Hank Hooperman.
Perfect name. Whatever it's
Best
about, I
title
already am
ever.
sold. That's very good. Well, you ladies have been lovely, and I so appreciate you being here. Catherine, great to see your face. And the last time I saw Jennifer, I was in the Starbucks in Marin City, and she was sitting there working. She's like, "Oh, hello." And it was such an out of context experience. Like, wait, do I know you?
How are you? That was a while ago.
I know. I think it definitely was. But I appreciate you both a lot, and I know all of our teachers do as well. So thank you so much. And we'll be seeing this book in everybody's hands, I'm sure.
Yeah, and thank you, teachers, for all you do. Making it through the pandemic and then popping back into the classroom. We love you.
We love
Yeah,
you.
and I don't think there's any reason to ban this book, right? I mean, it's robots and dogs.
Dogs? I don't know.
As someone pointed out, the dogs are naked, so there is that.
Dang it. Well, they've banned Charlotte's Web because animals don't talk. So I think you guys are not even getting out of the gate. Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh.
I didn't know.
California. We're glad we're in California. That's all I'll say.
Boy, that's for sure. That's
Boy.
Okay.
Or near California.
It's a weird world.
It is. Ladies, thank you so much for being here. And I know all of our teachers thank you as well.
Thank you,
All right,
Pat.
thank
We
you.
love you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye. Okay. Well, that's a nice way to start. It's all downhill from here until the next author joins, but you're going to have to put up with me for a little bit. I'm going to go in a pretty random order, so just bear with me. I'm going with what I can reach, right? So without going in, I don't have to spend a lot of time on these, but what I like about these books, it's numbers and sports. It's all stats and all how they work on the different number situations for football, baseball, and basketball. The math behind the perfect bounce pass, the buzzer-beating bank shot, so much more. The math behind the perfect punt, the game-changing interception, and so much more. And baseball, easily, also stats. And I just know, like, I have parents come in the store and they'll be like, do you have anything for a boy who loves football but doesn't like to read? It's like, oh, yes, I do. And he'll be reading, but he won't realize it. So they're really fun. They're great National Geographic kids. And I just highly recommend them because I raised one of those kids. He does like to read, but not that much. I really enjoyed this. I think it's a Junior Library Guild, so some of you may already have it. It's called Stranded. It's about two guys who learn of a volcano that's forming a new island near Iceland, and they think, dude, let's go. So they go to the island, and throughout the book, they tell you at the outset that there's something in this book that isn't true. And then the story is so outlandish that you're like, there's always these asides to the reader saying, I bet you think this isn't true. No, this is true. This actually happened. And it keeps going until you get to the very end, because they get to the island And the fishermen, they pay a fisherman to take them out there. And they're like, this is the coolest thing we've ever done. The fisherman will be back in 2 hours, but he doesn't come back. So that's kind of the storyline. It's called Stranded, a mostly true story from Iceland. And I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. Staying in the world of science. This is called A Day in the Life of an Astronaut and Mars. And it's very graphic, but it's all sorts of science information about what an astronaut would be doing and preparing to go to Mars. Can you see me? Yeah, it's just still showing up. There's so much information, but it's in little chunks. And I think there are a lot of kids that will like to read through this. And recently, I don't know, for teachers who aren't in Petaluma, we recently had a visit from an astronaut who grew up in Petaluma and was on the space station for, I don't know, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. And she was greeted like a superhero. I mean, it was so exciting for kids to meet her, and grownups were equally as excited. So there's a lot of interest right now in astronauts. I think she made it cool all over again. So I liked this a lot. A Day in the Life of an Astronaut, Mars and the Distant Stars. And I think it's going to be a series. I think there will be others in that series. Sliding over into this one called Spare Parts. This is a true story. It's a biography, I guess. Yeah, riveting true story. About 4 undocumented teens who loved science and decided they would go ahead, and they were in a school in Arizona, and they went ahead and entered an engineering contest, mostly populated with very, very top high schools and colleges, and they won. And it's such a story of perseverance. They made this underwater robot out of stuff they could find. They knew how things should work, but they didn't have access to any like high-end supplies or any. They just figured it out. And it's such a heartwarming story. And it talks about both where they went and how they got there and what happened to them afterwards. A couple of them didn't go forward, but they still have this most amazing experience and beat people that nobody thought they should have beaten. So I thought it was great. Spare Parts is the name of that. How are we doing? Doing okay? 6 months. Thank you, Krista. Spare Parts. Yay. Okay, cool. One of my favorite poetry books this year. We were lucky enough to have this poet visit 2 schools. Funniest wordplay you can imagine. It's like a contemporary Shel Silverstein, but he likes kids. And it's this one is called My Head Has a Bellyache. The words are funny. The illustrations are great. The first book he had out was illustrated by Lane Smith. This is a different illustrator, but they still work really well. And the schools that we visited, we were able to do a bookstormer visit with this. So one school, we bought books for every kid, and the teachers have said they went home, they read the books to their parents, they wrote their own poems, they were inspired to do various things. And it made me really happy because, well, they're funny, and he's a funny presenter, and I will get him up here again. He's also, if you haven't met him or heard us talk about him before, he is a showrunner in LA. Like he wrote for David Letterman. He wrote on How I Met Your Mother for 10 years. And he's also the showrunner of the new reboot, I guess they call it, of Frasier. So he's like in charge of that show with all their original cast. So he's got a lot going on, but wordplay is his very favorite thing to do. So the full title is My Head Has a Bellyache and Other Nonsense for Mischievous Kids and Immature Grownups. Highly recommend. Checking my time here. Okay. Moving into some really obvious, you don't even need to talk about these. There's a new Investigators. There's a new Wimpy Kid that came out today or yesterday. We have some autographed ones. It comes with a small squishy brain. Just one more use of plastic we didn't need. But kids have been really excited to see these. And so they're like old friends, and it's making them happy, and they're happy reading. So that's what we asked for. I want to touch on this briefly. This is by Ben Hatke, and he's an amazing illustrator who's both illustrated picture books and chapter books, mainly graphic novels. And this is a new, it's not wordless, but there aren't a lot of words in it. This boy is sent to the basement to get the missing sock for his new sibling, the new baby in the house. And when he goes to the basement, he doesn't find the sock. He finds a sock rat that takes him on this crazy journey. And so some of these spreads are just told with pictures, but it's really deep. It's gotten great reviews. It's really interesting, wonderfully spooky for this time of year. You will not go to a basement again to get a sock, but I liked it a lot. So it's hard to talk about because it is so heavily illustrated. So the story is very internal, but I liked it. And I think you've got some kids who would probably be like, oh, I could read this and not have to read. I'm going to grab some picture books. This came out today and I forgot it. I forgot it was going to be coming out. So you can barely see the cover because it's very light. It's illustrated by and retold by Philip Stead, and it's The North Wind and the Sun. And I love that story. Like I use that in so many, in my head, I know that story of kindness and warmth will get you further than force. And it's just, I mean, it's a beautiful book, but it's wonderful to be able to tell the story today about the competition between the sun and the wind. And so we don't have a lot of these because I didn't know it was coming out, so I don't have a ton in stock, but we can get them all for you. And it's just, it's a nice reminder that it's cool to be gentle and kind. This we've sold a lot of this fall. Sometimes it's nice to be alone. I think it's really important for kids to hear that message and to know that there's nothing wrong with wanting to be by yourself. And it doesn't make this child alone all the time. Just notices that sometimes she doesn't want to be with people and sometimes she does. And that's totally okay. It's a beautiful book. And I don't know. So Amy Hest wrote it. Oh, Philip Stead, same guy that illustrated the last book, illustrated this. That's why it's so warm and pretty. So what do you do if you like to be alone and a friend comes along, and how do you resolve that? So that's what this one is about. So I'm going to keep dropping these by my light, and eventually they're all going to knock my light over. It's going to be really cool. This book is called Spanish is the Language of My Family. We visited 2 schools last week. It also comes in Spanish. And it's about a boy who he's at home, he's hearing stories from his abuela about how she, when she was his age, was not allowed to speak Spanish. It was forbidden in schools, and you were punished or spanked if you ever were caught speaking Spanish on the playground or to yourself. So it was just so such a cultural shutdown for an entire swath of people. And she's so pleased that not only does he go to school where he's allowed to speak Spanish, he's studying for a Spanish language spelling bee. And they have those. And I didn't know that. And so when we were in the schools, the author, who obviously speaks Spanish, he asked for a couple of volunteers, and some kids came up and worked on spelling with him out loud. He'd give them the word and they'd spell it. And of course they have to spell it with a punctuation. And he was great. He coached them through it. And 2 of the schools, we were at McDowell and Loma Vista, and I'm encouraging them to have a spelling bee and to have the finals at the store. I think it'd be really fun because it's hard. I mean, we think our language is tough, but those kids are learning 2 languages and also learning how to speak and spell in their native language or their parents' native language. So again, this is Spanish is the Language of My Family by Michael Genhart, and I think it's great. So we have a bunch of those in the store in both English and Spanish. Don't worry, I'll be back. Last year, we were fortunate enough to have the author Max Greenfield, who played Schmidt on New Girl. This is his newest book called I Don't Want to Read This Book Aloud, which I think everyone should hear that story because most people don't want to read out loud. And it's fun and funny. It's illustrated by Mike Lowry. It's one of 3 now. One is called I Don't Want to Read, and the other is A Book Is Not a Present. And this is the 3rd. But very fun. I think a lot of kids will see themselves in it in a funny way. It's very enjoyable. So that's that one for you. This came out yesterday. It's Sir Morian, The Legend of a Knight of the Round Table. And I think what I really like about it is the idea that it introduces kids to the Round Table, to the whole Arthurian legend. And it does it in a really gentle way. It's not deep or dark or anything, but he goes on a quest, and he ends up, spoiler, he ends up getting together with Lancelot, and they go off and they find King Arthur, and then they go off on quests together. But I just think, there we go, you can see it. I think it's fun for kids to know that legend, and I don't know if it gets elevated much in schools or libraries anymore. There's plenty of other stories that take precedent, but Sir Morian was a knight of the round table, and I thought that was kind of fun. It's told by Holly Black, who writes a lot of dark fantasy for teens, but I guess she decided to dabble in the world of picture books because this came out, and I think it could be fun. Checking the time. This is a cool book. This is called Invisible Things. It's about things that are invisible, and it talks about things that you might, it gives you a pair of invisible things glasses, so you can look for things like, not the obvious things that you might see, but things you might not see. And it talks about the five senses. So it's talking about what you hear, you know, it's a dog barking or a whisper or a song that's stuck in your head, as I said before. What can you feel? And it's just neat. It gets talking about, and it does talk about both vibes and emotions in a cool way that gives kids maybe some words to use for how they're feeling. But it's not only about feelings, so it doesn't feel quite so heavy-handed that it's just like lecturing to kids about feelings. It's really fun to look through, and I think they've done a really good job talking about the various other things that you can't see but that you do know. So this is called Invisible Things. It's by Andy Pizza, literally spelled pizza. This came out last spring. It's a picture book. Don't worry, I will do other things than picture books. I can hear some of you going like, oh, I don't need picture books. Although picture books are good for everybody. But this is called The Artist. It's about a small dragon-ish creature who loves to draw. And then she kind of goes outside the lines, and somebody kind of criticizes her, and she loses her umph, and she gets to the point where she's not sure she wants to draw anymore. And it's only when she realizes people miss her drawing. She used to draw on the side of buildings. It's huge. Like she would turn these big buildings into works of art. Now you're gonna have to look at it in the store. But it's a lovely book about the power and the power of drawing and the power of allowing yourself to make mistakes, and that nothing is ever undoable. It's by Ed Veer, he's definitely a store favorite, and it's a really pretty book. In addition to being a really good message. So, and you can see one of our other authors is on. Sean, we're coming for you in 5 minutes, so be ready. I'll keep yakking until then. 3 more picture books. This from Sophie Blackall. If I Was a Horse. Come on, that's funny right off the bat. This girl is just imagining, I assume it's a girl, imagining what it would be like if she was a horse. She could go to class, she could go swimming, she could not have to wear clothes. She could give her sister a ride to school. It's just fun, and it seems like it could be a fun project to imagine if you were any animal. What would your day-to-day life living at home be like if you were a whatever? But in this case, it's a horse. And here she's dressed for her ballet class. So Sophie Blackall is an amazing author and illustrator, Caldecott winner, and this is her latest. Because I happen to know she loves horses. And when people go to visit her, she has an old farm where she fixed up a barn, and authors go out there and stay for a week in residence. And they all have to draw a horse. She has this whole notebook of horse drawings from different people. Even if you don't think you can draw one, you are required to draw a horse. I want to point out, I have this Something Someday. This is by Amanda Gorman, the poet, who we all probably heard speak at President Biden's inauguration, and illustrated by Christian Robinson. It's beautiful and hopeful, and it will just be there for you to look at tomorrow night in case you want to add something to your poetry collection. This one I liked a lot. This is called A Stone is a Story. It's kind of the end of my whole science line tonight. I don't have a lot of science. Just talking about what a stone, by the time it makes its way to you, what its story is and how far it's come. And you know, my mom is great. My mom has these really great round rocks, and she's like, wait a minute, come here. She goes, watch this rock, and she'll push it, and it never quite stops moving. It just moves. She says, look at that. She goes, that rock has been so many places. My mom's 94, and the fact that she still likes rocks that much makes me very happy. And it's true. Stones, by the time they make their way to us, what have they been through? Where have they been? Like, here's a picture of a mammoth, who knows where a stone has come from. So anyway, I know a lot of kids like rocks. I know that because I find them in the store. They carry them in and then they put them down. So it's a nice one. The Stone is a Story by Leslie Barnard Booth. All right, I'll give you one more and then we'll switch over to our next author. This is a weird book, but it's kind of cool. It's called The Little Kid with a Big Green Hand. And it's a long story about this kid who was born with a big green hand. One hand is just big and green. And it's the drawings. I mean, I think it would both encourage other kids to tell a story, but also there's something just really cool about it. And the switch in the story is eventually that it's about a big green hand that's attached to a little pink blob, which is our protagonist. So it's just a good way of looking at things two ways. It's gotten just great reviews. It's by Matthew Gray Gubler, and he's a New York Times bestseller, and he wrote this one about having a big green hand. So I think a lot of kids would actually enjoy it. Coming up next, last week, we had an author who visited schools, and I wasn't certain how his book would go over, but I liked the idea of it. It was like, high level Magic Tree House for older kids, about two kids who live in the White House. Well, we sold out like usual. I underplanned, and we didn't have enough. Kids were coming to the store to see him afterwards. We had a fun time with this book, and I'm really thrilled that even though it's now about 10 o'clock in Washington, D.C., he has agreed to join us. And so I'd like you guys to meet one of my new faves. This is Sean O'Brien. And Sean, if you can unmute yourself, and we'll let you talk about your book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patty. And thank you for taking me around, just a couple days ago. It was amazing. And I now have a new favorite place on earth. I want to get back to Petaluma as soon as I can. As Patty said, we got a great reaction from these kids. They were very much into just the concept, but also they were really into the idea of connecting with these children who would live in the White House and then find an escape that takes them to another time. So the quick high level on this is that it's Marissa and Clara Suarez. They are the children of the governor of California, who then gets elected as the first female president of the United States. So then they have to move with her to Washington, D.C., and they're in the White House, which seems like it would be this massive grand adventure. And they quickly find out that that means that you're constantly under surveillance, that you constantly have no ability to go out and just climb a tree if you want to. Very much in lockdown. And as we were talking with these kids, I could really see that they could relate to this idea. They've all been through their own lockdowns. They all learned how to go to school exactly how we're talking right now. And it was interesting. I even took a poll at one point. How many of you think it would be neat to live in the White House? And like less than half of them raised their hand. So I'm like, okay, fine. You're getting the concept here. So then the idea is that they go back in time because they have found a secret hidden clubhouse underneath the White House that lets them get away from all of this and lets them connect with the only other kids who really understand what they're going through, which is other presidential children. So they go back and they connect with Teddy Roosevelt's children in the first book. And they find themselves in this crazy world where there's 6 kids and 20 pets running around the White House. And the kids really got interested in the pets, which was honestly, that was the thing that sparked our idea. Me and my 2 kids, Jay and Claire. Originally, we had just read a story about how Teddy Roosevelt had 20 pets, a bear, a hyena, a badger, pig, 5 guinea pigs, and a pony that they actually did bring up to the 2nd floor of the White House on a brand new elevator. When an elevator was installed in the White House, grown-ups were afraid to use it. The kids very quickly learned that they could take a pony up in it and bring it to Archie's room when he was sick with the measles. So that kind of became the hook of the first draft. These kids are going to go back in time. They're going to help Teddy Roosevelt's children bring a pony to the 2nd floor. And indeed, that is the first couple chapters. But as my editor, instructed me at first, you don't have a whole book here. We need to really do something. They need a mission. They need to go somewhere. Well, we chose to send them to California because Teddy Roosevelt went on this truly epic and historic train trip in 1903 that featured 24 states. It would have been 25 if Arizona had become a state yet. And it culminated with this camping trip where Teddy Roosevelt disappears into the woods with John Muir for 3 days, running away from his Secret Service and the press, and nobody knew exactly where they were. And then they emerged with a plan to create what we now know as the National Park System. So in this book, Marissa and Clara help him out a little bit. They stow away on the train. They push him a little bit as he's surrounded by kind of industrialists and different forces, all the things that the country really was kind of struggling with at the turn of the century, between preservation and industry, between growth and ecology. And they kind of push him in this direction, all to save one tree. So that's essentially the book. But I am now fully fired up, having seen how all of these kids really responded to it very well. And the questions they asked were amazing. So I want to take some questions here, but I have to say, you have a tough act to follow. This is a game of, are you as smart as a fifth grader? Because Patty, am I right? These questions were unbelievable that they were coming back.
They were great. And, the kids, it was really interesting because, and I didn't say this in your intro, but I'll say it now. Sean was speechwriter for Vice President Biden. And so when he told the kids that, I thought it might be not hugely interesting to them. I thought they might be like a little young for that to be cool. They were thrilled. They were like, wait, have you been in the White House yourself? I mean, have you met President Biden? Did you meet Obama? And they had all sorts of questions about that. And then they also, like, the talk that was going on in the background, like, Sean, you're like, well, they had to take the pony up to see Archie because he had the measles. And they're like, oh, it's the measles. I don't know. I think it's a sickness that used to be, I mean, it was just like, it was so fun. They were so engaged though. But he has some serious credentials to be writing about the White House because he worked there. So, and teaches at Georgetown, which is a lot like our local Petaluma schools, but bigger. But yeah, teachers, do you guys have any questions? You want to put them in the chat? You can. But if not, Sean, how was your trip home?
My trip home was absolutely flawless. It was great. So it culminated with, I ended up getting a little bit more time in town, and even found a tasting room, and then then drove back across the Golden Gate one more time and got the car turned in and did the red eye back. And then this morning I slept until noon, which was kind of awesome too.
That's kind of fair.
Yeah, exactly right. So,
well, and you got to see some actual redwoods while you were here too.
I
right?
did. I actually managed to get both coastal redwoods and mountain sequoia out of my trip. I went hiking down the ridge all the way down to the Muir Woods and then back up. And then I went and visited my cousin in Merced, and we went out to the Mariposa Grove in Yosemite. And it was really cool, even when I was bringing up these places with these kids. Has anybody ever been to Yosemite? And all these hands get up, and everybody wanted to blurt out talking about their personal trips into the woods. But it was also kind of clear that, they were asking me about life in Washington and like, have you ever been to have you ever seen the Capitol and all that? And, I live in Capitol Hill. I could walk out my house and see the Capitol. And I realized to them, that's as amazing as to me staring at these trees that are in their backyards. And, I visited, Mill Valley Library, which is surrounded by redwoods. So I was completely geeked out by it in a way the kids are like, oh yeah, trees. What? You don't have 2,000-year-old trees in your home? So it's
pretty good. I see some questions in the chat. The title again is the first one is called The White House Clubhouse. And I think the other titles might be different there. Yeah, exactly. This is his daughter, by the way, this cover, which you won't be able to see with me. She showed the passage of time by having a horse and carriage on one side and a limousine on the other. So it's kind of cool. But Sean, like a couple of things. When so you said, did you go to speakeasy at Volpe's?
I did. I made it to speakeasy. I did.
That's
awesome. I have no idea. I just picked up some street cred there. But yes, and that was on a Copperfield's recommendation. So yes.
Nice. And somebody wanted to know, you said this is book 1. I happen to know what you're planning, but what are your hopes for the series?
So the idea is that Marissa and Claire are going to continue living in the White House, and they're going to go back to the clubhouse on a regular basis, and they'll end up in different times and see different presidents, but also more to the point, different kids who have lived in the White House. The second book, which was fun to announce to these kids, I really just kind of teased them and like, you don't want to know, and they were like, what? I'm like, wow, really? You actually care? Okay. So the next title is going to be White House on Fire, and it's going to be about the War of 1812.
I was going to see if the teachers knew, because
Oh
when
yeah,
that's the pick,
exactly.
it was
Right.
good.
The kids picked it up. The kids knew that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Claire and Marissa, they're down in the clubhouse and they smell smoke. And then they come up and suddenly they're watching the White House burn down, and they're running across the countryside, eventually ending up at Fort McHenry in Baltimore to witness the bombing that would inspire our national anthem.
Yeah, and that was cool how you worked it in. And it was interesting, although the kids didn't necessarily know the War of 1812, they had a lot of good guesses as to why the White House might have been on fire. Everything from World War II and the Civil War and the Revolutionary War and 9/11. Like they're paying attention.
Yeah,
it's cool.
No, absolutely. It's funny that one kid even kind of had the 1812 story, but it sort of conflated it with, wasn't it during World War II when the cook left the stove on and it burned the White House, but they put a lot of food on the table anyway, and then the English ate it? It's like, you're getting
pretty right.
Story, yes.
So yeah, we're delighted that it did so well. Again, you never know when it's a new concept, and I was so happy the kids, again, we sold out. And then Sean drove back up here in commute traffic on Monday to sign a bunch of stock for us. So we have signed copies at the store. And yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. And I said Magic Tree House. I mean, it's a chapter book. It's like 3rd through 5th grade. It's not, but it's that feeling of these kids having these great adventures. And once you accept that the magic can happen, then it's pretty cool. And Stephanie, you said 5th graders are the focus age. I don't know, 4th or 5th, I'd say.
Yeah, it seems to have had a pretty good wide response level. I did a talk at a junior high at one point where the kids were really into the concept, so
that's true. Yeah, we talked to 6th graders when you were here at one of the things, and they were just as locked in, and had a lot to say. Although a lot of them want the kids to go back and see dinosaurs, and there weren't presidential kids then, but well, I so appreciate you staying up late and getting on this chat with us. You're welcome to stay on, but I'm going to release you, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh no, well, thank you. And thank you, teachers, for everything that you do. My mom's a teacher, and so cool to see you in action when I was going around to schools. And as I said to Patty, with my own kids, anytime I ever went on a field trip, I would come home exhausted and I'd be like, thank God for teachers. And so love you all. I appreciate it. So,
Sean, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, back to me, just me. Don't worry, we'll have one more for you. So these are some books that, getting into middle grade, this one surprised me. I really liked it. It's called Select, and it's about a girl and a group of girls who play on a select, real high-end girls soccer team. And they work hard to get there, and they love the sport and they love the game, and it's very competitive. I put notes on the back, but the coach is an asshole and really misogynistic, and he's cruel to them. And they have to learn how to both stand up for themselves and decide if they want to push back against somebody who's, the pinnacle of their young sports careers. And if they make him mad, will he kick him off the team? And what will happen? And he's all saying, don't act like a girl, be tough. And, how they resolve it and how they learn that it's okay to stand up for yourself. I thought there are a lot of kids that can get a lot out of it. And also, we often need good sports books for girls, and there aren't a lot. They're either short or they're lame or whatever. And it's not long, but it's pretty profound. So again, this is called Select. It's by Christy Matheson, and I enjoyed it. And also, I think the coach was a jerk. I think this could probably be in the chat for a Newbery this year. This is by Gary Schmidt, who's an amazing author. Anyway, And this is called The Labors of Hercules Beale. And Hercules is a 7th grader, just starting 7th grade. And he's lost both of his parents. They were killed in a car accident. So his brother has come home from where he was at school, maybe at Georgetown, and is taking care of him and running the family nursery. And this kid is reeling, and he's in school, and he's having a hard time even being a part of this world at the moment because he's so sad. And his new teacher is giving them all assignments around classic tales, and he's given the 12 Labors of Hercules. And he's not given a lot of guidance on it. He's told what they are and how Hercules, he read about what Hercules did, but then he has to figure out how to do a project around those in his own way in modern times. It's a lovely book, and the characters all feel very real, and his challenges are real. And yeah, I thought it was good. I learned more about the 12 Labors of Hercules because that's stuff I've long since forgotten. So I think it's a really good book about persevering, about grief and loss, and the community that surrounds you that can lift you up if you are struggling. So highly recommend. Okay, I'm going to do two at the same time. So this book is called What Happened to Rachel Riley? And a new student in a middle school sees this girl who clearly, her picture's everywhere. She's on every team. She's the head of everything. And suddenly she's shunned, like she's being left alone by the whole school. And this new student she wants to be a journalist. And so she decides to start a podcast and try to figure out what happened to Rachel Riley. Like, why is she gone from, top of the heap to a pariah? And it gets into all the challenges with social media and things that people say online and things that people do online. And I think it's an unassuming way of investigating that, but still making it kind of a Mean Girls story. It's really well done. So that's that one. And then some of you know this one. This is Accountable, and it's written by Dashka Slater. And I'm looking at Kiri because we were at schools with her last week, and we went to two high schools and one middle school. This is a true story that happened in Albany, right across the bay, when a social media post that was racist went viral, and all the people that were impacted. Oh, that's cool, Ginny. All the people that were impacted by this thoughtless group of kids who didn't think about how awful what they were doing was. There were court cases, there were riots. And what was really interesting, so she's a journalist, and she wrote the 57 Bus, which some of you may know. But she researched this. She talked to almost all of the people that were involved in it, the students that were impacted, the students that made the social media posts, the teachers, and kids were really into it. And then after school, kids can come down and meet the author. I had 5 6th grade boys from Cherry Valley, from where she spoke, come in to buy the book. Like, I would never have thought it would necessarily work for a 6th grader. There's nothing, it's not hard to read it, but I wasn't sure they would be into it. And they were really seriously interested in it. So we have two books, one literally investigating something that really happened, and one kind of, soft pedaling it a little bit, but still dealing with the power and the horror of social media. And so I think they could both be great. And I would like to get Dashka back up here, because now that I realize it worked so well for a younger audience, I would put her in more middle schools, because it's a really stunning book. 57 Bus, absolutely. What else were we saying here? Oh, you're quoted in the book, Ginny. Geez, that sounds like a tough time to have gone through. But yeah, so 2 very strong books. Now I'm going to switch to just some fun ones before I go back to heavy hitting ones. This is called 30 to 60 Days. It could work for middle school, high school. There's really nothing wrong with it for anybody, but it's 3 different kids who are in high school together, and they each individually, they don't hang, they're not of the same groups, have been exposed to bio warfare testing. And so each of them is infected with a parasite that will sadly kill them in 30 to 60 days. There's really no hope. And they're like, the government comes in, wants to put them in the hospital and study them and see if there's a way to fix it. And the kids are like, well, screw that. Let's go steal a boat and go to Florida. So it's this adventure of these kids who are, facing the end of their lives, but also learning a lot about each other. And again, one was a straight A student, one is a kid who's survived leukemia in his youth. And so now he's like, seriously, this is what I survived it for. And one is just a daughter of one of the scientists who made the test in the first place. It's funny and it's irreverent, but it's also really a great friendship tale. And I won't even tell you the ending, but 30 to 60 Days, written by L.K. Wood. And we keep it in our teen section, but we'll have all these out on a table for you tomorrow night. This I'm in the middle of. It's just really fun. It's called Pride and Prejudice in Pittsburgh. It's a girl she's been planning to go to RISD with her boyfriend. He dumps her. She loses her heart for art at all and doesn't know what to do with herself. And a cranky old guy who comes to the neighborhood tosses her a coin one day and she catches it. And suddenly she's back in the early 1800s on a very fancy place called, can't remember the name of the place she's living, in England. And it's both a romance, it's studying what makes you you and what makes them them. And the idea of this girl who's wearing a camisole top and jeans and boots and is found by this woman dressed like she's directly out of any Edwardian novel the scenes are great. It's really fun. I'm sure it's going to become a romance. I'm hoping the girl from back then comes forward to this time, but I don't know yet. I don't know where it's going. Very enjoyable read. This is by Rachel Lippincott. She wrote a book called 5 Feet Apart, which also is really popular with teens. And I just thought it was great. So that's for you. Oh, this is a cool book. It's the most boring cover. It's really too bad. I feel bad for the author. It's called Once There Was. And it's a young girl whose father always told her fables, tales from the Middle East. And the opening line is, once was, once wasn't. And then he tells her these stories about fantastical creatures and people things that happened. And it's just how he relates to his daughter. He tells her a lot of stories until he's murdered. And he was a veterinarian. Turns out these stories aren't made up, they're real, and these creatures exist, and that's who he treated. He would fly off to Russia to treat a phoenix that somebody had or whatever. And so she's trying to run the vet practice, understand the deal with the loss of her dad, but also understand that he was telling her true things. And it was fascinating. It's really a good book. It has a very quirky ending, but in a really cool way. I enjoyed it a lot. And some of you know my daughter, but she always says, but did you finish it? I did. So this is by Kiyosh Monsef. And yeah, it's good. It's good. It could be a good class read aloud, or we can get past that cover. That's the big challenge. Back to some time. Okay. Back to some middle grade. This book is called Greenwild. Again, it's like Disney. There's another missing parent. But it really works with a lot of green eco warriors taking care of the planet, but underground. I don't know. I thought it was really fun. And it's been 6 months since I've read it, so I'm having a harder time telling you about it. But it stayed on the list. So I do know it's a good one and a good adventure, and there will be more in the series. And we don't know yet if her mom is alive or dead, because that happens a lot. This is the latest Kate DiCamillo. It's a really weird cover, and it's called The Puppets of Spellhorst. But like everything she writes, it's brilliant. And it follows the tale of these 4 puppets. And it's done in 3 acts, which I think is kind of cool. Again, this could be something to be a fun read aloud at any age. This is not limited to younger kids. And it looks like she's probably going to go on with more stories, but it follows these puppets and what happens to them and their sort of sad life before things work out. You can't go wrong with her books. So I don't even have to say more about that. And 1 second, make sure I'm not being contacted by anybody that needs something. When you have 16 messages come through, it's sort of And I do have another author joining in a bit. I don't think he's here yet. He's coming on at 7:10. And Jamie, if you see him join, will you let me know? Okay. We talked about this book, this author before. This is Adam Rubin, and Adam has been involved in picture books and you know, see Dragons Love Tacos? I think he is, yeah. Anyway, he did this once before with a book called The Ice Cream Machine, and he writes a book, he writes a story, and then he gives the same title to 6 or 8 other authors, and they write a story. So the only thing in common is the title. And it's such a fun way to see how many different ways people would write about a story called The Human Kaboom. And the other authors that he has involved in here, actually, yeah, Daniel Salmieri. So that is Dragons Love Tacos. It's everyone's fanciful thing of what that would mean. And the ice cream machine was the same thing. Like everybody had a different way of explaining what an ice cream machine was and what a story would be. Could be great for people who are working on writing short stories or want to encourage kids to think of new ways to write together. So that is The Human Kaboom. Then I scared myself with this one. It's called The Cursed Moon, just came up. And this kid loves to tell tales to his friends. He's really good at telling stories. And this creepy neighbor says, don't tell any stories tonight. There's a blood moon. And he's like, whatever. And so he ends up telling stories, and then all hell breaks loose, literally. And so they're on the run. It's, you know, it reads younger. It's not super long, but for all the kids that want a scary story, that are looking for something to scare themselves and their friends, it's all in here. I didn't like reading it because it scared me, but I don't do scary books. But it's not that bad. So it's by Angela Cervantes, The Cursed Moon. Let's switch back to two high school ones real quick. This is one of the more important high school books, only because I see a high school name on there. I don't want anybody leaving. Plan A just came out. Deb Coletti, who wrote it, won the Printz Award for one of her last books. She used to write kind of casual teen books, and suddenly she's written some really profound ones. This is literally a teenager who gets pregnant in Texas and what she has to go through to try and get to Oregon to get an abortion. And the stories she runs into along the way. I couldn't put it down. I found it both, emotional, but also important. And I think everyone should, you read these stories in the news, it's like, oh, they're banning it here, or they're banning it there. But this is firsthand. This is, what would that be like to have that be you? And the people she runs into are both kind and also have their own tales to tell. So I think it's really good, and it puts a face and a story to headlines that we're constantly reading. So, and there's a weirdly important twist at the end as well. So Plan A by Deb Coletti. Sure to get banned if it hasn't already. This is called Phoebe's Diary by Phoebe Wall. Phoebe is a best-selling illustrator, and she literally found her diary from when she was a teenager and illustrated it. And it's fun, and it's painful. It's painful reading what a 15 or 16-year-old is thinking. She didn't do a lot of editing. She left some stuff, or she took some stuff out, but generally it's what she was going through when she was a slightly overweight, slightly depressed teenager that just wanted to be cool. And it's kind of fun to see, where she took it and what she did with it. And let me see, one sec here. We're waiting for. Oh, we've got 5 more minutes. Okay, cool. Don't worry. I have more books than you have time, so. I don't need to spend any time telling you this, except there's a third in the Wild Robot series. And it's the Wild Robot. You can't go wrong. That's been our bestseller by far. Some of you know the book, sorry, Wolf Named Wander and A Whale in the Wild. This is that author, Rosalind Perry's newest book, A Horse Named Sky, again told in the voice of the horse. And it's she just tells a good story. What's cool too is I met her recently and she lives in Oregon. She said, if you ever want me to come down and do school visits, I'd be happy to. And I was like, yeah, I have a few thousand kids that would love to hear from you. So we'll work on doing that in the early spring because her stuff is just really, I don't know, it's so easy to get into and read the story of a critter in that critter's voice. So again, Horse Named Sky, the newest in that series. And we're going to transition to some early readers for a second. This is Bear and Bird. It's just super cute. Early emergent reader, early chapter book. Great illustrations. His friends solving their problems. They're best friends, except sometimes they're not. And there are a few books in this series, but I thought it was really cute. And I like there being quality books for emergent readers. We've got the Beyond Mo Willems and Beyond Max Hijack series. A lot of the other stuff is a little bit, it's a little dreck. This feels like the real thing. So that's one. And then this just came out yesterday, and it's called Trim Sets Sail. And Trim is a cat who joins a pirate ship. And the illustrations are fun. The story is great. There's a dog on the ship as well. There's a parrot who's annoying. I think parrots are always annoying. Fun illustrations, but chapters, so it feels like an accomplishment to be reading some of this. And it's very early level. And it's based on a real cat. And there's a statue of the man and his cat who sailed. Maybe he wasn't a pirate. I may have invented that. But he was a sailor anyway, back when there were pirates. So those have been fun series. And then looking for our author, but I don't see him. This book came out. Some of you got to meet Henry Winkler last week when he was here. This is called Detective Duck. Henry is notably and very willing to share the story that he is dyslexic. And so he's always trying to write books for kids who have a hard time with reading, that are funny, that have short chapters, that are illustrated, that have fonts that are easy to comprehend when you have a challenge with your reading. And this one was illustrated by Dan Santat. So it's the first of a series of a book about a little duck who is raised by a beaver, because that happens, and wants to be a detective and is working really hard to solve crimes, find crimes first of all, and then solve crimes. And so it's cute, and we sold a lot of them, and I think I know there will be more in the series. Henry writes these with Lynn Oliver, who he says he can't write, but he can dictate stories, and she writes them down, and they argue over who says what. But he's very passionate about kids reading, and this has been something he's been working on for a long time. He has a whole lot of other books out, the Hank Zipzer series, and yeah, it's, sorry, looking one more time. Our author, I'll bet he's joining any minute, but I'll jump on one more book before he does. This is called The Skull. It's an old Tyrolean folktale illustrated by John Clausen, retold and illustrated by John Clausen. And it's just good and creepy. It's short, lots of illustrations, perfect for this kind of creepy time of year. And you just can't go wrong with Clausen's illustrations. And it's a girl who finds a skull, and the skull finds her. So it's their adventure together. And I don't know, I think it would just be a good seasonal read aloud. I don't know if a kid's going to want to necessarily take it home, but it's a good one. Sorry. We don't see our author yet, but they're going to tell me when he gets here. This is another early reader series. See the Ghost. The first one was See the Cat, which had a dog on the cover. And the next one was See the Dog, which had a cat on the cover. And it's just an ongoing funny books. This is about seeing a ghost, or can you? Because maybe you can't see it because it's a ghost. Kids have really loved the series, and I think it's great. So we have it in our emergent reader section. It's 3 stories about things you cannot see. It's not the first time tonight we've had a book like that, but this one is for early readers. This book, Still have so many more, you guys. You're going to be here for hours. This book comes out next on the 7th, and this is called The Apartment House on Poppy Hill. It's by Nina LaCour, who's an award-winning author for teens. And she may have done one middle grade, but this is her first early reading book. And it's like Ivy and Bean level. It's a girl who lives in San Francisco. It reminds me of Eloise meets Ivy and Bean meets Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin, because she lives in an apartment house. She's always spying on people and checking on things. And she's just the coolest character. She welcomes people as soon as they move in, even though they may not need any help. It's really fun. So anyway, Nina's going to be here on November 15th. I have her, which is a Wednesday. I have her in 2 schools in the morning, but if anybody has afternoon classes, we have an opening for her in her day. So for you guys in her day. So let me know, because we would come over and visit you. Anyway, The Apartment House on Poppy Hill. It's very cute. Doesn't come out for 2 weeks. What you said? Talk about some graphic novels? I can do that. So, First Cat in Space Ate Pizza. This is the sequel, The Soup of Doom, which, if anybody knows anything about these books, they're incredibly illustrated. They're very popular. Kids love them, and they're funny. And then Sean and Mac have written this soundtrack for each of the books. So there's an entire soundtrack on, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever, for The Soup of Doom. And the music's really, really good. They were playing it at the event we had here. The kids were singing it and everybody knew the words. So it's cool and rare to have a book and a soundtrack, but this is it. So The First Cat in Space Ate Pizza, Part 2, The Soup of Doom. This is called Hoops. Oh, pause. I see our author. So you guys, there's a really cool book that has come out. It's gotten 5-star reviews. It's an early chapter book. It's called The Story of Gimlick the Wizard. And we're being joined by author, illustrator, award winner, very funny guy, Adam Rex. And Adam, if you want to unmute your phone, your screen, you can listen to you tell us about this book.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Patty. So The Story of Gimlick the Wizard is the first in my new chapter book series. It's a series about a silly little wizard who wants to be a hero. And he is a hero. To me, he tries to help everybody that he meets, but he also wants the kingdom to love him for it. And they kind of think that he's a noodlehead. I wanted to show you a little bit of it and read a little bit. So I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Pardon me, I'm just trying to figure out where that is. There we
Down at
go.
the bottom. There you go.
Share everybody. No, I was trying to find the correct screen. I have a lot of windows open. So everybody see this now, the cover of the book.
Yes.
And did you go ahead and all follow me as I went to full screen there?
Yes.
All right, so here's Gumluck. Here he is with his friend Helvetica the Raven and a little ghost named Butterscotch that he also meets during the course of this book. The story starts with Gumluck waking up on Monday and being very excited because on Monday he has visitors from town. The people come and ask him for things, basically. They ask him to solve their problems for him. So he's very excited. He's cleaning up. He meets for the first time Helvetica the Raven, who is in the yard trying to find sticks and straw to make a nest. And he tells Helvetica the Raven that the people in town call him the little wizard who lives in the big hill. And they suddenly worry, what if his hill isn't big enough? He makes a bucket out of magic and he scoops mud up to the top of his hill to make it bigger and bigger so that the townspeople will know where to go. Then he worries, what if I'm not little enough? And so he shrinks himself to make himself a little bit smaller. And soon his visitors come. His first visitor is a woman from town who wants him to make her a dress for the harvest dance. And instead of just making a dress out of magic like she expected, he teaches a bunch of birds and mice how to sew and sends them all away together. And she's not real pleased at that. His second visitor is a man who wants big muscles and he doesn't want to exercise. So Gumluck waves his hands, and now the man has muscles. Too many muscles. Way too many muscles. The man muscles angrily out the door. His third visitor from the kingdom is a prince. And I'm going to start reading from here as the prince arrives. The third visitor was a prince from the castle, I guess. I never learned his name, so I'm going to call him Prince Whoop-de-Doo. He rode up, whoosh, in a shiny carriage with horses. It was all very pretty. Very, very pretty. You know how some things are so pretty, they're ugly? It was like that. The carriage door opened and pink silk rolled out like a tongue. The driver played a trumpet, toodle-dee-doo, then Prince Whoop-de-Doo walked across the silk and in through Gumluck's open door. He looked like a fancy toilet brush. I disliked him immediately. He said, "Wizard, I order you to make Lady Pomplamoose fall in love with me." "Oh," said Gumluck. "I tried ordering Lady Pomplamoose," the prince explained, "but it did not work." Gumluck squirmed. "I could do that," he said. "Why does my tummy hurt?" "Because it is wrong," I said. I being the Raven Helvetica, I forgot to mention that she's the narrator of the story. "Because it is wrong," I said. "Even a noodlehead knows that. Love cannot be taken. Love is a gift. It has to be given." Prince Whoop-de-Doo scowled at Gumluck and said, "Then you have to make her give her love to me." I said, "You do not have to do that." The prince pouted. "Look, are you going to do it or not?" Gumluck looked like he might faint. "I am not," he said. I could see it was hard work for him saying it. So he quickly made the man a lollipop out of magic and held the door for him. "Sorry," he added. "So sorry. Good luck with that lady." The prince grumbled as he left. "Silly wizard. Probably would have turned me into a toad by mistake." I spat. "You were a toad when you got here." Then the prince went back in his carriage, toodle-dee-doo, the silk rolled up, and whoosh. We were alone. "Too bad," Gumluck said. He picked at the star on his robe. "I guess that prince will tell his friends at the harvest dance that I wasn't helpful at all." I wanted to tell him that terrible toads do not have any friends, but sadly, that isn't true. Rich princes with full pockets will always have many friends, standing near, waiting for the money to fall out. I was interrupted by a fourth visitor, a man with tears on his face. Great. "My daughter," he cried. "She's lost in the haunted forest." Without a word, Gumluck leaped up and ran out the door. "What?" I squawked, took wing and chased after him. "What are you doing?" I called. He didn't answer. "Are you running into the haunted forest? Fool! You are too foolish to know what is good for you," I said. "Stop and think. It is a dangerous place. Many of the ghosts there are hungry and hateful." "Yes," said Gumluck as he ran. "It is no place for a child." It was easy to see where the regular forest ended and the haunted forest began. It was like a black eye on a pretty face. Gumluck ran in through the rotten trees and the sobbing rain. I stopped at the edge of it, afraid. I could not see Gumluck anymore. "Silly," I said. "Silly wizard. You don't just run into the haunted forest." I know all about the haunted forest. The wind howled through rickety branches. I said, "All right, enough's enough. Come back now." Lightning flashed and thunder crashed. I sniffed. He was gone. That's too bad, I thought. Then, to my surprise, Gumluck walked back through thick shadows with a girl in his arms. This book actually started right after I got fired from another book. It's the first and only time that's happened. And it was pretty disappointing. I had been working on the book for a couple of years. I was already about halfway through the finished art for it when I got word that they were canceling my contract. And this was a book with an author that I really wanted to work with. But it was also a very complicated book. It was a hard book to figure out. It was a even harder book to illustrate. And so after it was suddenly over, I realized that apart from disappointment, I actually felt a sense of relief. This book had become like an albatross around my neck, a complicated albatross, like a fractal albatross, where if you looked closely at the albatross, you would see that the albatross had smaller albatrosses around its neck, and then those albatrosses had albatrosses. And the whole thing got so complicated that when it was all over, I realized I was kind of happy to just have the opportunity to make something of my own, to make something sweet and simple and the exact opposite of the book I've been working on for a couple of years. And that's what the story of Gumluck the Wizard is. It is absolutely my heart transcribed and put on a page for you to like or dislike. So I appreciate any of you that give it a shot and read it and share it. And thank you so much for listening to me.
And Adam, the illustrations are they're just phenomenal. Like the raven looking into the forest is anyway, your art has always been amazing, but
thank you.
It's just nice to have a nice book, just a nice book with a fun adventure that's not got any huge weight to it. I didn't know people ever got fired from gigs. They must have been pretty unreasonable for you to not be.
I didn't know either. I found out when I got fired from a gig. It turns out it's the worst possible way to find out that can happen. But
God, yeah. I'm really sorry. Well, whatever book it is, once it comes out, we'll put its spine in. We'll make sure it doesn't sell.
Okay, thank you.
Just in honor of you. You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Adam, thank you so much. It was a last minute ask, and I really appreciate you being here and jumping on. And I'll let you go back to your evening.
My
in
beautiful
Arizona,
family. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for everybody for listening to me. I appreciate it. Good night from Tucson.
All right, thanks, Adam. So again, you all, that's called Gumluck, the story of Gumluck the Wizard. And we have that in the store for you. And it's just fun. It's just nice to have a fun book. So Adam Rex, he's illustrated some Max books. He did Frankenstein and Wanted a Sandwich. He did the story of Smek Day, which became a movie called Home. He's really talented and pretty amazing. I'm going to go over some other ones quickly and then end on a couple of my favorites. There's a new Carl Hyacin. He's done all these other books that you have known over the years. It's another boy set in Florida. And it's very good. Ginger Spice wrote a book. This is her book, and it's an adventure book, actually, about a girl named Rosie Frost, who's a pretty good girl protagonist. She's strong and she's not afraid, and surprisingly doesn't have a mother, because apparently that's going to happen in every book. But it was enjoyable. Again, it's one that I did finish reading. I read it because Ginger Spice was coming, but I finished it because it was good and a good adventure. So that's a fun one. Obviously, the start of a series. So you all know there is a Percy Jackson book 6 that just came out. This is Percy. Now he's in high school, but it's all the same setup. Again, between this and the sequel to The Wild Robot, we've been selling a lot of sequels this week. A couple more, and then I'll be done. This, a graphic novel by Dan Santat, actually was really good. It's kind of middle-aged, coming of age, going on a trip to Europe, being the unpopular kind of picked on kid and finding his way. And it's his story. Beautifully illustrated. I didn't expect to finish it, and I did. Switching to high school romance. This is Hockey Girl Loves Drama Boy. It's a girl who plays hockey. She's good. She's strong. She's a talented player. She's a horrible temper, and she can't seem to rein it in. And she always sees this guy who's in drama, who seems to always be so composed and chill. So she asks if he'll give her lessons. And that's the story of these two characters. It's very fun. Very good. I just thought this was funny. Mall Goth. It's a girl who's new to a town. and she's goth and she doesn't fit in very well, but she loves that they have a mall because she loves hanging out at the mall and working at the game store at the mall. And so it's fun. I think a lot of kids, teens will find themselves in that book. Okay, we're winding right down. You guys did a very good job showing up on Zoom because we just had somebody show up in the store who was looking for Educator Night. So sorry if it wasn't clear. Hoops is the story of one of the first girls basketball teams. Again, great sports stories for boys or girls, but you know, before Title IX, girls teams were not given much regard, and it makes you both angry for how they were treated and happy that things changed. And the kids did a really good job. Looking Up by Stephen Pastis. His stuff is always good. It's not a graphic novel. It's a chapter book about a girl named Saint who tries to save her town. We've sold a ton of these. They're I don't know what it is about him, but he has a way of writing that kids like, even when it doesn't feel like it's written for a kid. 2 that you can look at tomorrow night, or 3 you can look at tomorrow night. Dear Medusa, high school book about a girl who's been essentially slut shamed and also been assaulted by a teacher, but it's written in verse and it's really compelling and really good. I Loved You in Another Life, which is a time travel book. They keep finding each other generation after generation, by David Arnold, who's written some of our other favorite books, and it's very well done. And then last but not least, 2 of my favorites this year. This is called Where the Water Takes Us, and it's just an 11, you can't quite see the title, huh, or the cover. Anyway, it's an 11-year-old who has to go for the summer to spend the summer with her grandparents because her mom is pregnant with twins and needs bed rest. No bad story there, it's all fine. But the girl is like any person that has ever worried for a pastime, that is really good at worrying, like me. She just continually is looking for signs that things will be okay. And she finds a baby bird and she tries to save it. She thinks, if I save it, mom and the babies will be okay. And then pretty soon things don't go so well with the bird, and then she feels awful. And then she's like, okay, if no fish jumps in the next 5 minutes, everything will be okay. And a fish jumps. And so she's like making all these deals with fate that her mom be okay. And she's so in her own head. But it's also, she's on a mountain lake that feels like someplace I go for the summer. She's with grandparents that love her and everyone's trying to support her. And she's just a worried 11-year-old. But boy, this guy, Alan Barriello, who wrote it, he's a screenwriter, it says. He sure got in the head of an 11-year-old really well. So I think it's a great book. And then my favorite for the year, for a variety of reasons, is The Eyes and the Impossible, which is the story of Johannes, who's a dog who lives in essentially Golden Gate Park. He is the eyes of the park. He surveys it all the time and reports to the bison and lets them know what's going on. And it's just brilliant. And Kim Ribeiro, I don't know if she's, oh yeah, there she is. She did a project with her kids. So they took public domain art and painted in the dog. That's how it's illustrated. All these different beautiful illustrations, which they give credit to in the back. They have added Johannes as he runs to the park or whatever. And Kim, can you tell us, I don't know, can you unmute? Can you tell us about, you may not be able to. You can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What did you have your kids do?
So my kids loved this book so much. I teach 2nd and 3rd grade. And so when we finished, no spoilers, but when we finished, we wanted to imagine Johannes continuing his adventures. And so I found, I asked for donations of old calendars, and we took all of this. Ours was not public domain art, so there might have been a few like Van Goghs in there. And we practiced drawing Johannes, all different scenarios, and then they got to choose where they wanted him to go. So they chose the background, and they had made the Johannes, and cutting was very good, fine motor skills for 2nd and 3rd graders. And then they placed him on these beautiful landscapes, just like Sean Harris did. That's
such a great idea. And the book is like, I keep saying it's a little bit like Little Prince, like it's as profound as you want it to be. It can just be an adventure about a dog in a park. But he's funny, and he's smart and also not smart, but it also can be as deep as you want it to be. And there's a chapter, and Kim, you know which one it is, where it's a very simple chapter where just one sentence is repeated, and it just stunned me. It was such a good moving moment. So it works 2nd to 3rd, it works for middle school, it works for high school. It's just a great book. So it's called The Eyes of the Impossible. It's by Dave Eggers, and can't recommend it highly enough. I don't have Dave zooming in. I was going to ask, but then I thought that won't happen, so I did it.
Hey, Patty, I also maybe did an Eyes in the Impossible tour during our fall break, and I created a little Google Maps. So
That's so great.
if anybody wants to see some of the places where they go, I can share
That's
that.
so clever. And Dave will say, like, when I talk to him about the book, he's like, it's not necessarily Golden Gate Park. It's like, dude, it's got, you know, a
It
wild
is
dog, bison,
totally.
and windmills and a beach. So it's pretty Golden Gate Park.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. God, what a great full inclusion way to use that book. That's really cool. Well, you guys, we got right to 7:30. We had some amazing authors join us. You guys were all here. You knew where to come for the event. We'll have the shopping night tomorrow night. I swear I'll have chocolate and wine. You've earned it. I can't thank you enough for what you do and how you are dealing with all the weird pressures of the world and still turning out such amazing kids and doing creative projects with them and all that. I appreciate you all so much. So that's it for me, unless any of you have any questions. That's what I got. Okay. Love you all. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow night. Thank you so much, Sean. Thanks for hanging in there and listening to me yammer about books other than yours. And we're all good. Thank you.